Hi, welcome to my quilting beehive. Today I am going to talk to you about the Creative Grid's Ultimate Flying Geese tool, which is my favorite tool for trimming and making perfect flying geese every time. The ruler looks like this, and it is designed to make your blocks in 8 different sizes, all with one ruler. It looks a little overwhelming with all those lines, but I'm going to show you how they work, and it's very simple. You can make flying geese as small as a 1/2 inch by 1 inch, and they go up in size all the way to a 4 inch by 8 inch finished sized block. What's great about this ruler is it lets you make them 4 at a time. So we're going to make 4 flying geese blocks right now. For each set of 4 blocks that you need, you will start with 1 large square, and that will make the large triangle in your flying geese. It'll make the large triangle. And then for each set of 4, you need 4 squares. The sizes you need will be on the ruler. There's a little chart telling you what size you need, and it shows you the finished size of your block and then what size to cut right on the ruler. It's also in the instruction manual. Today I'm going to make the largest size, which finishes at 4 by 8. So I have my large square, and I look on here 4 by 8. It's a 9 3/4 inch square. And then you need 4 small squares, and these are 5 1/4 inch. The first thing you do is mark the back of your squares. Now some people like to mark the center line and then just sew a 1/4 inch on each side. I like to mark both of my lines, and that way I can sew on the line and I know I'll be straight and I won't go off the line at all. I use the Quilter's quick 1/4 ruler, and I line it up, and the center has a crack in it. My point of my square is in that crack, and then I line up this one so it's point to point across the center. And then I like a mechanical pencil, makes a fine line. This is the Sew Line mechanical pencil. Nice thin line so you know where you're sewing. And I can mark both sides very quickly and easily. So you're going to mark all of your squares on the back. So you'll have 4 squares, and all 4 of them need their mark, just like this. And take your time, hold the ruler steady so your lines are nice and straight. And there you go. Now to make them 4 at a time, you're going to lay these small squares on top of your big square. Put one in the corner, you're going to sew across the diagonal, so you want them to go diagonally across. And they overlap. So your first 2 will go on here and they overlap in the center, just like that. You're going to sew along those 2 lines right on the line, and if you prefer to mark that center line and sew a 1/4 inch away, just sewing 2 lines a 1/4 inch from the center of the square. So sew those 2 lines. And once you have them sewn, you'll see they're attached there on both sides. You're going to cut on the center diagonal. So you're just going to take a straight ruler, go from corner to corner, and trim. That will leave you with 2 pieces, and you'll bring them to your ironing board and press them to open them up. And they kind of look like pointy hearts if you turn them upside down here. I always think of them kind of as a heart. You know you have it right if they look like a pointy heart. So bring them to your ironing board, press them so the seams go to the small triangles, and then you'll be ready for the next step. Once you have them all pressed, you're going to take your 2 more squares that you had and lay them on there. And again, it's a diagonal sew. You want it to go to the point from the center here to a corner. Make sure you don't put it the other way. You don't want to sew the other direction. You want to sew this direction right here. And you'll put these 2 on for these 2. Sew on both lines on each of them. And then they will look like this. And I stitched right on the line. And then you're going to cut those apart. I lined up my ruler point to point. Separate them apart. and separate them apart. And when you press that final seam, you will have 4 flying geese. Now this method, the numbers they gave you make them a little bit oversized, so you'll definitely have plenty of room for your seam allowances in the corners, and we're going to trim them to make them perfect. I'm going to set these unpressed ones aside and pull out a couple pressed one for you to see how to trim them. Now here's where we get to the ruler. On this ruler, if you look across the top, it says trim 1. We're going to start with that one. You'll notice there's an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. They're all different sizes. So that's the point where you're going to match your point in your flying geese. We're making the largest one, which is size H, but you pick the letter based on the size you want it to be. That little small one, that one was right, oh, the smallest one. The smallest one fits right in there in point A. And we're making the largest one, which is point H. So H is where I'm going to go. So trim 1, point H. I'm going to bring my ruler, and I'll face it towards you so you can see it upside right. My H is right here, and I'm going to line up that right at the point of my flying geese. There's a dotted line, and each one has its own color. This one is white and black dashed lines for H. So I'm going to make sure that line lines up with the 2 sides of my big triangle, and the point is right even with my point. Once you have it lined up, on each time you're going to trim the right side and the top. So the right side gets trimmed off and the top gets trimmed off. And we've trimmed half of our flying geese. Now we're going to rotate our ruler around, because down at the bottom, if you rotate it around, it says trim 2. And trim 2, just like the other side, it has a point for A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. So I'm going to use the H because we're making the largest one. And that H is going to line up with the point on, and I'll turn it around so you can have it facing you. Point H is lining up right there. There's a dotted line that goes all the way along my triangle on both sides. On the first side, this one, it's the same line on all the sizes, and then they get bigger as you go here. So that's the largest one. So I'm going with size H, and you'll notice there's also a 4x8 line across here. That's the bottom of my block. And I'm lining it all up there. And then we're going to trim the right side and across the top. And now, just like that, I have a perfect flying geese block. And I'll pull out one of my large rulers just so you can see that it is exactly 8.5 by 4.5. And there's a 1/4 inch from that point to the edge, so we don't have to worry about losing our point in our seam allowance. If you use this ruler, no matter which size you're making, from the very smallest one all the way up to the largest one, you'll end up with a perfect 1/4 inch above your point. So when you go to sew it into the next piece, you will never lose your point, and it will make a perfect flying geese every single time. This ruler is one of my favorite rulers to use because there's no better way to trim and make perfect blocks that I have found. I hope you find this easy to use. If you have any questions, you can write to me in the Mystery Quilt group if you're making the Mystery Quilt, or in the comments below. You can ask any questions about this ruler. I strongly recommend it. I'm not a big gadget person, but this is one gadget I use all the time because they're flying geese in so many different blocks. I hope you have a lot of fun making flying geese. Try out the ruler, and I will see you again next time. Thanks.